This is NuggetReviews with finally a new review of the GoPro Hero 3 HD action camera. This action camera is usually used for motorsports or skydiving or whatever you can think of because it's so small and light. And how good it really is, we will try to find out in this review. My idea for this camera is FPV flying, and if you are an FPV flyer, this is probably the right review for you. So here's the unboxing of this little camera. On the box itself it has the camera on the top and a crystal clear plastic mount as a cover. The GoPro itself is a very small device, and usually they have these stickers and a little bit of wire like the USB cable, and has some adhesive mounts as well as some movable plastic mounts to attach the camera, for example, to a helmet or something. The camera itself comes in this waterproof plastic case. It's transparent. This makes it very easy to actually see if there's some water inside of the camera housing. The camera housing is, as I will later explain, very waterproof, like until 60 meters, and it also features a flat lens surface. It is very easy to open, but I've heard some reports that the little notch on the top to actually close this camera box tends to break, so be careful when you open and close this box. The camera itself is surprisingly small. It has a battery cap at the back, and obviously the lens and the display, as well as two LEDs, one for wireless network and one for recording video or just announcing that a picture is going to be taken in a few seconds. Also at the back is the regular extension mount. Under this nice little cap here you have a mini HDMI output in a micro SD card slot and also mini USB. The mechanism to fix the back door of this housing is very stable. It has a little switch to open the case like a lock, and this really helps to not accidentally open the case by itself. These little plastic mounts have a little sticker at the back. It's a 3M. You can see the usual camera mounts here. They are very sturdy, very stiff and rigid, but the only problem is that these little screws on the side, these plastic screws, are so small that it's very difficult to actually screw them into a tight and fixed position, which means I usually use two of my hands to screw them very tight, and sometimes this is not even enough. Another one, and also big advantage over the GoPro Hero 1, is actually the menu system. On the front of the camera you have a very nice little screen, and this screen is actually a dot matrix screen compared to the very bulky LCD screens you get on your GoPro Hero 1. And to get to the menu system you just turn the camera on and you see a little icon flashing that this is actually the camera mode. And on the front you can also see what you will probably not see on this camera there, that you are in 1080p mode, 30 frames a second, you have 23 clips on your camera, you have a remaining time of 11 minutes 24, for example. You see how charged the battery is, and also you directly know and see in which mode you are, so camera mode, time-lapse mode, or delayed photo mode. And to get to the menu, just press the menu button once. and then you see that there's a little icon saying that this camera is now in camera mode, in photo mode. And then you can go through the different modes, and then finally you reach the icon with your settings. And then when you circle through these settings here, you can now see in which mode you are actually in, or in which setting you are actually in. You can directly see the setting you are trying to set up. And each of these menus has an exit at the end, so that is really easy to navigate through these menus. It's directly comparable to the very nice Apple iPhone or Android application they have, because this thing has also the built-in wireless I also mentioned, and through this wireless, as you can see here, you can set all the settings as well. And since you know the structure from the application, you also directly understand the structure of the settings inside of the camera. And I think this is a huge advancement over the GoPro Hero 1, because if you configure this one, you need to have the manual with you. You probably know that the first GoPro and the second GoPro version use these regular SD cards. These SD cards are very cheap, very nice, and good to handle. The new version of this GoPro camera uses this kind of micro SD cards. They are extremely small, extremely light. They make the packaging of the system overall smaller, because also the socket for this little beasts here is smaller, obviously. So in a size comparison, this is really not comparable at all. You usually use an adapter to put the micro SD card into the SD card to read them, and that's about it about the SD cards, basically. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say, as you can probably think. The camera is also very known for being used underwater, so if you are going for a dive or for example surfing, it's very nice to have a waterproof case for the camera. And fortunately this camera comes with a case. It's capable of having 60 meters of water above it, and they also made this this is a very big advantage over the older cameras. They made the surface of the lens flat, so that you don't have that much distortion in the video image. It's also crystal clear right from the start. So after like 5 or 10 centimeters, you get a sharp, crystal clear image. I was in the lucky situation to send this camera to Tenerife to get some very nice underwater shots. The idea was to have a very good friend of mine dive down into some cave, but unfortunately I couldn't get the shots because this cave diving just didn't happen. So here's some example shots with water, and you could probably see some fish, and you can also see that the image is very nice actually. I think one very important and very interesting feature also is the time-lapse function. You're able to take pictures one after another over a certain period of time, or as long as your battery lasts. The idea is to have time-lapse like stuff is built up, clouds are running by, sun is rising, whatever you can think of, and capture it with this little device. And as you can see, it works quite well. This camera is able to take these pictures with 11 megapixels, and as you can see, the looks of the picture is quite nice. So it doesn't jitter, it doesn't do any distorted imagery or noise or whatever. It's just a very nice view. Usually the GoPro comes in a set of theme packages. So you can, for example, buy a water surfing, wind surfing package, you can buy a motorsports package, or you can just buy the naked camera with some sticky mounts to it. But unfortunately, with the GoPro Hero 3 they changed this kind of approach, which is, in my opinion, unfortunate. For example, I would like to buy the motorsports edition of this camera because it has this, well, 40 euro suction mount, which is very stiff and very stable and very rigid. So you can just attach it to any flat and clean and dry surface, and you get a pretty stable mount. Unfortunately, the GoPro Hero 3 doesn't have something like this, so you have to buy any additional accessories. Since I had this camera just for 3 weeks for the period of testing, and it didn't come with a suction mount. I had to build my own, and this is basically it. It is made from a very cheap suction mount you usually use to carry glass around, and one of the adhesive stickers, the adhesive mounts you can use to attach to basically anything like a helmet or a plane or whatever. And I tried using this on my car, but as you can see, unfortunately, the mount that comes with the camera, the very small one, is not able to withstand vibrations. So all the vibrations is carried onto the camera image, and that doesn't make such a good impression to me. As I already said, I wanted to use this camera for aerial shots, so FPV flying. And this is basically the machine I was doing it with. So I just had this nice little quadrocopter with a big battery underneath, and then I tried to attach the camera to this front camera mount here. Unfortunately, as you can see in these aerial shots, there's vibration throughout this whole system. And for some reason I don't really understand, GoPro is not providing a fast shutter mode, so that all the jitter from the vibrations are not transferred this intensely to the camera chip. Meaning the image is basically scanned from the chip in lines. And while you scan your lines at the lower end, the upper end of the image is already relit, which means that you get more light onto the chip, but also on fast movements a straight object is basically bent, which means on a vibrating system your objects wobble a little bit like this, and this can be quite disturbing, especially when you have such a great view over the whole scene like this and you get very intense jitter. And what I found out was, for some reason, the 60 frames recording doesn't have the jitter. This is very surprising to me, and this raises the question to the developers of the GoPro: please add a fast shutter mode. I want to be able to set the shutter frequency or the shutter time to like a 16th of a second or even a hundredth of a second, so that I can get rid of this annoying jitter without building a super stabilized and foam-packed kind of camera mount, which adds weight to this flying thing. But now let's go to the most important part for most FPV flyers. It is the AV out. You usually use this kind of camera to record the video by itself, but you also want to use the composite video out of this small device to put into your video transmitter to be transmitted to the ground station, and then you feed this video signal into your flying goggles, and then you see everything from the view of the pilot, basically, as you were the pilot of this very small aerial vehicle. Unfortunately, this GoPro has no regular AV out. Instead, it has under a small cap a plug for USB, and this USB connector here is also equipped with some kind of composite video out. Unfortunately, this is a USB connector, and obviously you cannot just plug in a regular AV cable to it. So what they do is they provide you with a cable that has a little PCB with some kind of circuitry in it, and then you get the AV signal out. But this cable is A, very big, and B, very heavy. So as you can imagine, and C, your usual camera protecting case has no hole for it, which means you basically have to attach the camera bare bones to your aerial vehicle. And that might be not such a good idea, because in case you crash, you probably will lose the camera too. With the Hero 1 and the Hero 2 it was much easier, because you can just go and buy a regular connector for 2.5 and 3.5 millimeter connectors and add your own cable to it, which every FPV flyer is usually capable of doing. So just soldering a cable with some connector on the other side of the cable is really not the biggest problem. But in this case it's not possible. You have to buy this $20, €20 cable, and I think it's rather unfortunate. From a marketing point of view, you should change this camera to this camera. This is the GoPro Hero 1 and this is actually the GoPro Hero 3 Silver Edition. But why should you change it? Well, from the perspective of the specs, this camera has a much better low light vision. So you get not as much noise, you get not as much gain put into the video, which produces the noise. And the idea is to have just a clearer image, better colors, and an overall better feeling of the image. But when it comes to actually use these pictures, look at them and see the result of all of these different videos you took from the night scenes, from the sunsets, for example, and then the sky gets dark and stars are rising. I get the impression in my in-car shots and my night shots with just the street lights turned on, that these two cameras are pretty comparable. There's not such a big difference between these two. The GoPro Hero 3 gets a better image in a way that you have better colors, you have a clearer image, so it's sharper and the overall experience from the image is a little bit better. But when you see that this GoPro Hero 1 goes over the table for like €150 at eBay, and this camera costs €350, and also the GoPro Hero 2, which is also very comparable to these two, it's hard to see the point, really. So what is my final verdict then? Should you actually upgrade the Hero 1 and 2 to the Hero 3? Well, if you earn the Hero 2, everybody says it's probably not such an upgrade. If you earn the Hero 1 and you look at the different things you can get, like better image quality, a nice and way sharper image, then it's probably a good idea to have this upgrade. But let's go back for a second to this little camera again. You have the wireless built in. It's much smaller than the GoPro Hero 1, so this means it is also lighter. And you get the better image quality. The image is crystal clear, it's very sharp. The low light condition and the low light vision is not as good as they promote it to be. But I think usually when you have an action camera and you want to use it in action situations, you will not do it at night. I mean, maybe the Black Edition with its extreme slow motion settings, but this Silver Edition just has the regular settings you probably get also on the GoPro Hero 1 and 2. Maybe not the 240 frames or 120 frames, but that doesn't really matter. But this camera in itself, I don't really like that it has just the USB plug and no small 2.5 or 3.5 millimeter inputs. And I also am concerned about the battery life. Not the battery life like you can throw it away in 1 year, but the battery life when you try to record video, for example, on my quadrocopter, and it just survived like 3 battery packs of my quadrocopter, and that is 45 minutes of recording video. And imagine you are somewhere on a mountain and you want to try and film your snowboarding. 45 minutes is not very long, it's really not. And in addition to that, even on time-lapse mode you get like 3 hours. I would expect this camera to shut down during no picture taking, start up again, take the picture and shut down again. But it seems it's not really doing it. It's just having the system on, not recording, not processing the images, but the images are still whatever on. This system needs a lot of energy, just to make it short. But I think the camera is a very nice little camera. It makes beautiful pictures. And it just needs this little firmware upgrade that you can actually set it to a faster shutter mode, because 30 frames is very nice, but I don't need a 13th of a second shutter. What I need is like a hundredth of a second, or even maybe a 16th of a second, so that I can get rid of this jitter. All in all, I really like this thing, and I will probably buy one. I will not say it is whatever, a 9 or a 10 out of 10, because this time this comparison, this kind of rating doesn't really add something to the review, because you will probably buy it anyways. But I think it's a nice one. I think it's a little bit too expensive, but if you have the money and you really want to do films and videos of your hobbies and your action, then you will definitely have the money to actually buy one of these, and I think it's worth it. And see you later on the next Nugget Reviews.